Last fall, we stood up and talked to you about the issue of adverse possession, whereby people renting out property that did not legally own to some unsuspecting tenants. These people had applied for property under adverse possession rules that had been on the books for years, but make no mistake about it, appropriating someone's house when you don't own it and then using it as your own rental property is unlawful. Since that time, we worked closely with Representative Daniel Davis, a Florida House member from Jacksonville, who successfully crafted legislation that defines if and when someone other than a mortgage holder can take possession of a property. Since that time, we've also been monitoring and investigating all applications of adverse possession. Yesterday, we arrested Rosemary McCoy and Elton McCall. Both were arrested on a variety of charges related to their involvement in an adverse possession scheme. In October of last year, the suspects applied for adverse possession of 7 properties in Duval County and began renting those properties under the company name of Going Global to unsuspecting tenants. Our investigation was led by Sergeant Whitney and Detectives Jim Baxley and Heather Stevens of our Economic Crimes Unit. They looked into the legitimacy of these 7 applications, and during the course of the investigation, the suspects applied for adverse possession of 6 more properties and began to attempt to rent those homes out as well. These detectives conducted their investigation, and with the cooperation and guidance from the State Attorney's Office and assistance from the Clay County Sheriff's Office, these suspects were arrested yesterday on a variety of charges. And those charges include racketeering, influence, corrupt organizations, or RICO, conspiracy to commit RICO, organized schemes to defraud, grand theft, and burglary and trespass. After the conference. In July, the new legislation I mentioned will take effect, and it will make it harder for people to abuse the law and make it easier for us to build and prosecute cases of these criminals. And in closing, let me say, we will not conduct some legal negotiation when it comes to adverse possessions and people who use that as a means to defraud. We do not view this as a civil case. If you're involved in an adverse possession con game, we will conduct a criminal investigation and we will make an arrest. So with that, I'll open it up to you.
So you flag these as soon as they show up at the city office and then investigate to see whether or not it actually falls within the rules?
Yes, sir. We do.
This Going Global, was this an actual storefront that they had? How are they working with the tenants, and how do the tenants go about their renting process?
And I'll let Sergeant Whitney get into some of the details. I'll tell you this, they were representing themselves as a management company and offering these properties to, again, unsuspecting renters.
How much for rent?
Market value, probably.
Usually market value between $700 and $1,000 per house per month.
If you are a renter, how do you make sure you don't fall into a trap like this? What can you do to make sure you don't rent from somebody who's bogus?
Well, and in these cases right now, the real property owners, the banks, they're working with some of these people who got into these properties. Some of these people may stay. They may rent the properties from the banks, and others may have to leave and rent other properties. So the real owners of the properties are working with those tenants, to allow them an opportunity to either stay or get housing elsewhere.
Why were these homes empty? Were they foreclosed, or?
Most of them, I'm assuming, foreclosed.
Yes, sir. Most of them were in the foreclosure process or were already foreclosed upon, and the bank had taken over ownership. The ones that were still in the process, it took a great deal of investigatory time for my detectives, because we have a deed holder, a mortgagee, who we have to find, who's not going to leave their contact information behind when they walk away from a house and abandon it. So it takes a great deal of time for us to try to track that person down and verify that they have in fact abandoned the home. So yeah, most of these houses are abandoned, and we have to figure out who's actually the deed holder, or if it's actually the foreclosure process hasn't been completed yet.